All right. Awesome to be here. First things first, if I'm yawning, it's because I had a night train and bad sleep, and I'm a huge coffee addict, and the previous talks have been so interesting that I didn't dare to go pick up any coffee in the way. Today I'm going to reflect on my experiences on helping establish game companies, particularly now my latest adventures in Saudi Arabia, which ended this August. But I've been doing that a bit earlier as well, so there's going to be a bit more context to it. But let me first introduce myself. So who am I? Well, usually I start explaining that I'm a business-oriented game designer. I love both business development as well as game design, and that's pretty much my career in a nutshell, plus a bit of education or consulting and so forth. I've been 17 years in the business, founded several companies, been a CEO a few times, designer a few times. You can't add all those together because sometimes there has been dual roles. And 5 companies within 17 years wouldn't be like some of them have been just a side company, so not the full-time time things. Same as with Chris, it's a bit difficult to say how many games I have done, but 12 that has been launched. Then there would have been plenty of prototypes or ready to launch but abandoned, and then some games where I worked a bit, but is it enough that I would take credit that I was involved with that? So it's a bit difficult to say, but roughly a dozen games. The big reason, or which area of expertise I'm going to focus more, is that I'm also a business coach and consultant. I designed a new education model 10 years back, but that's what I'm going to focus a bit more on this talk. But I've got some credits also being a CEO or producer. I led a team that got 40 million downloads on a free-to-play mobile game, and most fun experience has been working as a producer when our small startup cooperated with the huge medical giant with over 10 billion annual revenue. I was only a producer there, so the others did the heavy lifting. When it comes to consulting, I think that premium and publisher-driven business is what I'm usually talking of, and that's also quite a bit what I did in Saudi Arabia. And currently for the last 5.5 years, I've been creative director at Resistance Games and keeping my at least one leg in the education field, so I'm also teaching game design at Oulu University. Such a long introduction. But let's start a bit with the disclaimer on the topics. So, of course, the operations in Riyadh was a team effort, and I don't want to take any credit away from those who did a lot more work there. So, Samer Abbas was the program director, and he's basically the main guy of the whole operations. Kensaku Nakata was full-time mentor in residence. I was just the revisiting mentor in residence, and Deem Almutairi and Leila Alosaimi were the operations team. So these were doing this for the full time. I wasn't there full time. I traveled there every month, but not full time. And there was another Finn, Juha Huhtakallio, who did exactly the same thing. So we were just constantly traveling back and forth and causing a lot of emissions in the way. And then, of course, there were 60 other mentors that just came for once to help with the participants in the program. And of course, my views are mine, so they don't represent game founders. So if I say anything to upset, then blame is just on me. And I would imagine that this is a topic that at least it touches me on multiple layers, both professional, but then also on emotional and personal level. And in order to keep this somehow interesting, I try to reflect both sides of the experiences. But let's start with the basics. So why was I there? So Game Founders itself, if you're not familiar, is a already 10-year-old game accelerator. And damn, I have animated, timed this slide, it seems. So they have a long history of accelerating existing companies. How do I go back? Let's see. Oops. Can I somehow pause? There is technical. I promised I won't have any problems, but it goes on with the next slide as well. Anyways, Saudi Arabia, of course, has the problem that, well, how can you accelerate if they don't have any companies there to begin with? So, of course, then I come into the picture because I did create an incubator model that has been proven to work in multiple places. So back in 2014, it was our lab model was selected as the best new learning model of Finland, and later it won the best innovative entrepreneurship training model as well. During this year, I also got to know Kadri, so I go way back. I was a mentor in the original Game Founders when it operated in Estonia, and thus Kadri was also aware that, hey, Jussi has experience on incubator side, which is clearly required if a Game Founder is going to operate in Saudi Arabia as well. The lab model itself did spread to Japan and the Netherlands. So over the years, as I was at one stage full-time, but then mostly part-time, still involved with that, I did get to see a bit of Netherlands, a bit of Japan, only one visit to Japan, but the Sendai area people from Global Lab Sendai, they constantly send delegations to learn from us. So I got a pretty good view on the Japanese side as well. So to start a bit on the basics, so incubators, of course, should have training for all the positions. So they should train not just the individuals in all required professions, meaning coders, artists, designers, business developers, and so forth, but they should also train the teams, because team working skills are equally important. And they should also develop the business itself. How will you make money with whatever you're doing? And then, of course, the game itself is the most important. And this was kind of like what we did with our incubator model, that we bring the startup DNA into the business, into the picture, and make sure that you don't have to know anyone, and you still can find the workforce to establish game companies, which would be the case also in Saudi Arabia. Often, already the start, if you're starting a game company just with your friends, the team structure becomes quite twisted. Maybe it's a very tech-heavy or very art-heavy, and the structure isn't very sensible. So this lab model, which we though call pre-incubator, but that's for funding reasons why we called it pre-incubator, solves also that issue. And frankly, I'd say that generic incubators that teach all creative industries or all businesses are pretty rubbish. They, like, if anyone here ends up on that side of things, please don't do generic incubators. They rarely can achieve much. And one of the most important things now working more heavily with Game Founders is that you don't run accelerators the same way you run incubators. And this is also something that I hopefully will share a few examples over the course of the talk. In our model, which we also operated then in Saudi Arabia, is that we implemented the fail fast philosophy straight into the program, meaning that projects constantly fail, not individuals, which is the case when we go to trade fairs. Most of the time we're going to be getting no's. We don't fund you, we don't want your game, and we're trying to get that one yes. So just to briefly go through the through the structure, what we used also in Saudi Arabia is that we start with very, very small team, team of one or team of two that has an idea. They have to showcase why would this game be fun, and then the best projects go through, and team is being built. They get workforce from the teams that didn't go through. Then they have to explain also how and why would this game make money. And then again, we disqualify some projects, and again, team grows so that they have the required skills. And then proving that can this team deliver. Then there is also at the demo stage, let's look at what you have achieved. And once again, the worst projects fail, and then the best ones grow. So team building is part of not just individual training, not just making sure that they have the capabilities of making a better product or better business, but also the team is being incubated. So it pretty much imitates the game industry life cycle. I'd love to go into more details how increased responsibility is given for the teams and how the structure, the different gates imitate what us as game developers do when we go to trade fairs, but that would be a bit like too much details, I guess. But most important is that it wouldn't be like lab model nor the Saudi Arabian case was no artificial fair play, that just because you did a good effort, that doesn't mean anything. Just because a mentor knows that you have done a good job, that doesn't mean anything. When you're meeting with investors, you have to impress. Or if you're meeting publishers, you have to fight to get them to care so that they would love to get to know more. That's why the disqualification or scrapping of the projects is done by outsiders, so that whoever knows that those are doing really well, let's let them pass, then those would not be the decision makers. So hence also eradicating any kind of let's make sure Jussi likes our project, so let's take care of Jussi's needs during the program. No, that won't have any impact, because it will be those who hear about your project for the first time, same as in Gamescoms or elsewhere as well. And of course, the steps which are exactly what publishers or investors are interested is that will the game be good? How do you make money with it? And can you deliver it? And this was then also operated in Finland quite a bit, and later in Saudi Arabia as well. So few basics before going into the reflections part. So why was I called, or why did Saudi Arabia call us, is of course because they know that the oil-driven business will come to an end at some stage, and they want to diversify their economy. And they are putting $38 billion into games so that game industry would thrive in Saudi Arabia. 50% of that would be buying stakes in foreign game companies, 38% to acquire publishers, or first one I'm not sure if it's foreign companies only, 38% to acquire a publisher, 14% to partnerships in the gaming world, and 2% in the other category. And if I'm not mistaken, we were in the other category, so the kind of grassroots operations. But there were lots of stuff happening above us, lots of other Finns there as well, mainly operating in the other categories. Well, Vesa, I guess, worked in the same category as I did, but many operating in these other fields. And it was also a long sales process to begin with. I became aware, or I was asked, would I be interested already in 2019, and then my work started in 2022, so quite a long process, even though I wasn't the one doing the selling. And indeed, as I said, why me is that with me comes 8 years of know-how how incubators are run, so then they wouldn't need to learn everything from scratch. But this time it was 100 participants instead of 35 plus 25, like what we had done in Oulu. And this time it was fully private as well, even though the participants did get kind of student fund level of income from the government if they participated. So their livelihood were covered as long as they got in, but it wasn't. They didn't get any study credits or anything. And of course, the resources in Saudi Arabia were totally different planet than what I had done before. 60 mentors were flown there and paid, accommodated, and so forth. And also, most of the kind of improvement ideas were, or room for improvement, were those that during the sales process where my feedback was given, I already pinpointed those. So, which is a kind of bittersweet realization, because mostly, like, nothing extra bad happened, but then those that I said that, well, we should push so that there isn't these KPIs or these things, and then we couldn't do anything for those. But a bit of borrowing from final demo day, 100 participants, not my slides, 20 teams in the incubation stage, which lasted for 6 months, and then a month break, and then 3 months of acceleration for 15 teams. And here are indeed the companies that were born, or startups that were born. And I'm gonna spoil already. One of the great discoveries is that 5 of them have a female CEO in them, which is pretty different than what I expected at the beginning. First, let's look what are different that needed to be accommodated as well in Saudi Arabia. First of all, it's surprisingly big difference that the work week is from Sunday to Thursday. This involves that if someone would be to come for a full week, they would have to be prepared to lose a weekend. Like I always lost a weekend as I came there always for a week. And then, of course, the one-time visitors usually were just 3 days there because, well, it's easier to give a week, but not week and a bit more. And of course, the climate is very different as well. Saudis are a night people, which I didn't expect. I should have, I guess, that the social life pretty much starts when the sun goes down, because that's the only time when you can be outside. Like, makes sense, but I didn't know what it means, that literally you work for a whole day and then surprisingly late the city stays alive or becomes alive, and then you're supposed to be work already in the morning. So that was interesting. For these incubator activities, the interesting outcome for this is that you can't really organize anything outside. So there is always a problem that, okay, where are we then going to be? Because you can't be outside. And then there isn't that many kind of hanging out places to begin with. So the networking, team spirit building, and all that was very, very different. But that being said, 45 degrees wasn't as hot as I thought. It's so dry air that it feels like maybe 33. So it definitely didn't feel like 10 degrees more than what I've ever experienced. But still, you will die if you stay outside for too long. Same as in Finland if you don't wear enough clothes in the winter. But anyways. All this means that the team building requires a lot more time. We are an introvert, tolerant industry where I think better than average, like introverts are not shunned upon, but they are integral, like as like they aren't as shunned down that everyone needs to be extroverted, like in wider society, at least I feel that extroverts get it easier. But game industry is very introvert friendly. But in Saudis, the fact that no alcohol is ever anywhere, then bonding time really does take a lot longer time in order for strangers to get to know each other. I don't mean to say that there should be alcohol, but it's just a matter of fact that it takes longer before people start hanging out or feeling related to each other. And of course, equality is an interesting topic, and not just the way that you would imagine, like reading the news. Because of course, the sexual minorities are a big taboo, and Saudis definitely rather not talk about it at all. They are always very uncomfortable if that issue comes up. But at the same time, the 40-60% gender split, which is a lot healthier there in our program and in the spawning game industry there, that's a lot healthier than, for example, in Finland. Better gender split than here. And it seemed perfectly normal. No one was like, I don't think they would have made a fuss about it if us Finns didn't make a fuss that, what? Like, how is this possible, this many women in the program? Sure, we did the selection, but we didn't have any favoritism, which I would imagine, or the only explanation that feels somehow credible is that since education is segregated, then it doesn't, the different fields haven't become segregated. So equal number of female programmers are there, programming isn't seen as a manly field, and so forth and so forth. And then of course like Saudi Arabia, it's fun that I was there with a couple of people who had been in Saudi Arabia 20 years earlier, and it's not the same country anymore. Some of the fastest positive developments when it comes to issues of equality have happened in the last 10 years. And this kind of positive, optimistic view gave a very interesting background vibe for many of the talks or many of the things, because the participants are incubation people knew that they are the first ones that have this freedom to push for creative industry careers. They know that they have now a chance that others didn't have, both in terms of female careers, but also when it comes to game industry. And that background atmosphere was surprisingly pleasant. That being said, lots of the stereotypes that if you read the news, and not just occasional, but properly read the news, then I feel that I came to a country that I knew that it's going to be like this. But all the surprises except one were positive ones. So if you are one of those who read a lot of news, it's going to be roughly that, but then all the surprises are good. That being said, let's look at a few of the bad stuff though. The program itself, exactly what I mentioned on the 2 slides ago, is that our program was being measured on the wrong things. The measurements being that number of companies being born, number of mentors brought there, number of games brought there, and so forth and so forth. These all measure quantity and not a quality. And knowing that we have to deliver only quantity measurements, not quality ones, then that's going to make life so much more difficult. I'll get to the examples in a bit. But what this quantity basically means for the team sizes, like the startups that we created in the incubation stage, imagine, like, sure, they were not university fresh graduates, but people in their mid to late 20s, some were early 30s. not yet a full-blown professional, so early part in their career. And the team sizes would be that you start alone, then you grow to 2, and then you grow to 3, and then in the end of, like last bit of the incubator, you have 4 people. Sounds a lot like what accelerators are celebrating. Yes, you shouldn't have extra bandwagon because you need to pay salaries and so forth, but you don't run incubators the way you run accelerators. So basically what this means that I can't guarantee that in Saudi Arabia best projects would have gone through, because if it happened in one of those disqualification periods that one person wasn't up to speed with his or her skills, then the work of everyone involved would be irrelevant, because, well, the bar how to get your project through is quite high. So at least at the most crucial roles, coders and artists, there should have been 2 so that they have something to show. And this is something I tried to push and push, but, well, this is the team sizes that we have. And even in the accelerator, there were 15 teams, now companies. And what 15 teams mean, that those visiting mentors would give a presentation or sometimes 2, and then they would have 15 to 20 minutes per team. And how much good can a mentor do in 15 to 20 minutes? Not much. If it had been 7 teams or 8 teams, it would have been half an hour. That's still not that much, but it would be at least something. Sure, there were like the good stuff where the weekly pitching stuff, that they get feedback, they get better with that, but mentors actually solving or showing how to solve issues within the teams, well, they had to do it via lectures only or within 15 minutes. So if there were half the teams, what mentors would matter a lot more. Or instead of 60 different mentors, if we would eradicate 2/3 of those and then just have the same mentors come back for more visits, then they would already know their problems and then they could help more. Even if we would select the worst mentors, all of our mentors were amazing, but like regardless who we would have selected, they would have helped the teams so much more if they had more time to help the team solve their problems. And of course, just lectures, it is a long way. It took always 19 hours for me to go there. So like lectures don't necessarily require presence. I did give many online lectures as well when I was still here in Finland, and they didn't perform that much worse. Another thing is that the bureaucracy in there is quite heavy. I'm not one of those that complain bureaucracy, because bureaucracy is there to safeguard that money is well spent. It is taxpayers' money there as well, and there is a reporting that we don't just splurge money on stupid stuff. There is anti-corruption measures, that's why they are watching over. But if similar stuff had been in Finland, the ministry or the funding organization, in our case ministry, would have had opening meeting and maybe middle meeting and final meeting, and that's it. But with us, we had to deal with them literally every week, sometimes every day, on telling what we are doing. So very, very heavy stuff. This is what Samer did, so then I'm forever grateful for Samer to protect us other mentors from this bit. And the only truly bad experience is that the country takes on city planning from the United States and not Europe, so you can't really go anywhere. Just to cross the street, I have a screenshot from my phone once that it takes 9 minutes to get to the other side of the road, like literally. It's horrible. Riyadh is not made for moving around. Then let's reflect on the good stuff though. Well, passion is clearly there. Like we as game developers, we're clearly the same tribe. And I thought that we would struggle more to lure the passion out or help them take risks or help them with creativity. No need to do that. That is already there, and it is just looking for opportunities to blossom. And when it comes to raw talent, I'd say that roughly, sure, there is always differences in details, but when it comes to Oulu Game Lab that ran for 8 years in Oulu, roughly the skill level is on the same level that when Oulu still had a good game education, then what we had, they have. Sure, Riyadh is a lot bigger city, and we had a pleasure to select from a huge amount of applicants, and that was a huge task as well. But still, like the skill level isn't really the problem. And then, of course, the good thing is that when a big machine with like enormous amount of resources decides to make things happen, there is not a shortage of resources. So Saudis will be putting a lot of resources into games, and actually also for the previous presentation on the esports. Esports is one of the key channels they have decided to put a lot of money in. So Saudis will be big in esports. And of course, Arabic market, not just Saudi market, but there are 300 million Arabs. So theoretically, they could serve their domestic market, so to speak, as long as the games would be as good as anyone else's game, because no one will play worse games just because it's made in the domestic markets. But it is a big market, which is enormously also underserved by Western or Asian companies. So there is a big opportunity also there. And sorry, 400 million people seem to misremember. And also the country itself already, this is one of the very positive surprises. Maybe I had been too stereotypical myself, but it is already more international than I thought. What I always tend to use myself is the taxi driver index. That when you're traveling, you spend a lot of time talking to taxi drivers, or at least I talk always to the taxi drivers, and how they approach and how well versed are they with languages. And it seems that they were quite knowledgeable about the world. They clearly speak more English than taxi drivers in France or Germany, and they can place Finland on the map. So that's always a plus. Another thing which doesn't get the credit it should is that everyone is very polite and knowledgeable. I didn't meet any badly behaving Saudi, and yes, at the beginning we were driven around always to posh places, but towards the end, when my work days no longer needed to be always 16 hours, which most of the time it was like very heavy to catch up and then do my part there, then I did venture alone to places that no one would really bring me to, and I was never in danger. I did sing karaoke in Saudi Arabia as well, and no problem. So I dare say that the place is also very, very, very safe. And interestingly enough, curiosity is a strong thing. That they are happy to talk, and they constantly are taking, in a positive way, coming to talk to strangers and asking where are you from and so forth. So that's a bit for the incubator. Then the accelerator. There was an issue with myself because I am a game developer myself. So at the beginning I was there quite a bit, and then my biggest consistent time was at the end during summer holidays. I didn't have summer holidays. I was in Saudi Arabia. But there is a big gap in the middle of the accelerator because, well, I needed to polish Great House of Calderia. So there is a empty space in my experience. But my feeling is that here the bureaucracy was at its worst. I know that Summer doesn't agree with this. Maybe it is because this time it started to be visible also to us. But I feel that in the accelerator we had to do the bureaucratic way, lots of things when we would have needed to step on extra acceleration. And also one of the things that always breaks my heart, because in the accelerator they didn't get the funding from the government, they now got the investment into their company by the government. And then the cash flow management was made impossible by having only minuscule initial installment and then small one, and the last one was large. And they had to live somehow. And when there were bureaucratic issues, then this was heartbreaking to see that, okay, they should be focused just on making great games, but now they have to worry that, well, will the government give the investment in time? Also, board meetings, of course, we as game founders, we didn't invest anything. It was fully government driven, so government gave them the money. But we kind of held board meetings like if we had, so that they understand what is the board's role. And that seemed a bit off. This is like, I'm not entirely sure why it had gone off, but I felt that we were giving mostly just tough love and not the caring love, which at least my experience with my boards in my career has been that the board is there to support you, to make sure that they have already bought the vision that I believe in you. And then the board member is trying to make sure that, hey, let's do this. You want to go there. Let's see if I have something in my network, and so forth and so forth. So a bit too much of tough love instead of caring love. So that's for the initial things about the Saudis itself. Next, I want to make a kind of comparison to what I've experienced here in Finland. But then I did go do similar stuff in the Netherlands, a bit more than in Japan. Not during the Oulu Game Lab years that much. Then I was just reading reports. I didn't see during those years what our partners did, but later I did go there in presence. And then, of course, the little bit that I got to understand Japan and similar operations. So let's start with Japan. And of course, they have very strong industry tradition, so there is no need to build any belief that what games can do or anything, because basically they, together with the Americans, they invented the whole damn thing. They have a very strong home market, which, well, I'm sure all of you know, is very difficult for foreigners to get into. But why Sendai people came to us for startup program is that their weakness is in the startup scene. Because the society is very, very top-down culture, which makes the startup scene extra challenging. That if it's the most risky business, how do I survive, small teams and so forth, this is very alien. And particularly with the face-saving culture, the fact that we celebrate failure, that there is no shame in failure, that was eye-opening, at least for the Global Lab Sendai people back in the days, and I hope still, because they're still operating. And of course, they have a culture of adapting best learnings around the world and making it their own. So there is no disillusion that they wouldn't take the best ideas and then adopt and start using it. Probably always with a twist, but indeed, in Japan, it was the startup culture that was particularly heavily focused. That okay, this is a way to alter the kind of face-saving, top-down culture to a new position. Now, in the Netherlands, the strangest thing is that it's the only place where serious games is seen as the easy industry, because it is the only country, as far as I know, where over 50% of video game revenues come from serious games. And I've had multiple interesting talks that yes, some of our best, the finest of Finland, have totally failed on getting the serious games to work. And there they say that, well, at least we're not making entertainment games because they are so much more difficult than the serious games. And that's mind blown. And there indeed it was like more focused that, okay, how does the entertainment games then, the fun games work, and teaching about that because they know how to do serious games. And that was also weird. Their public funding is more limited. I'm not fully aware of how their public funding works, but what I was told is that the sizes are smaller and it always requires outside partner, which is perfectly suited for the serious games, but not kind of like I want to publish my own game or become self-publishing company or anything. So adapting to that was kind of okay, how do I then get the money when they would need to start paying salaries to begin with. And as a result, many of their entertainment game companies are small ones. They don't have that big ones, I guess. Maybe some of the international companies are there, but like the independent companies are small. But they have quite a lot of publishers on the other hand, which is odd. And of course, then a different challenge in the Netherlands is that they have a huge over-education problem because they have 900 degree graduates every year into the game industry with game industry degrees, and the industry is growing only by 100 new jobs every year. So fresh graduates know that, well, most likely they end up being unemployed because the number of new jobs versus number of fresh graduates it's totally off. Well, Finland, and here I'm sure everyone, you're free to disagree some of my points, but the fact that we don't have a home market, we see that as a strength, that we can't afford to think that there is some Finns that will buy this game, but we instantly know that we have to think more about target audience. There has to be more than that. And then, of course, we have very open industry culture. When I started, there was a joke, and it was a joke, but tells about the openness that all NDAs are just worth one beer, and then all secrets are spilled. Sure, nobody spills the actual secrets, but it is true that there is skills or like lessons learned are shared a lot more openly than anywhere else I've witnessed at least. And then, of course, we have very much bottom-up culture, which is excellent for startup mindedness, that we don't expect others to start startups for us. We feel that we can make a difference. And then, of course, we have a welfare society and wide support also for companies, that there is a good public funding structure as well. And our weakness definitely is that we don't have domestic publishers almost at all. And the few that we have aren't that huge ones. And then reflecting back to Saudi Arabia, well, they of course don't have industry tradition, and existing companies are mostly expat run. So foreigners invited there with the big salaries. So role models are scarce there. There are, of course, some who have made it work somehow, but in a larger scheme of things, not really. The industry culture itself is tabula rasa, and that was one of the most rewarding things, that I could try to bring the very open industry culture to Saudis, and at least in our program, they seem to see the benefit of that. And still being part of the alumni WhatsApp groups and Discord groups, I see that they have continued to share information, and that has been very, very rewarding to see. And of course, wider culture is also very much top-down, but it isn't as top-down as Japan is. So I feel that they don't have as huge mountain to climb as the Japanese have when it comes to boosting their startup scene. But interestingly enough, only at the end in the accelerator, I managed to make people see the value of going to trade fairs where the business actually happens and you get the reference point on which level your games need to be and your skills need to be. And I don't really understand why it took so long, because I would have sent them like from the get-go everywhere. And wider, like the examples that they have, the few successful cases in the Middle East is mostly mobile, so it's very mobile heavy, the things. Few last points is that Saudi Arabia, of course, is in many ways very polar opposite to Finland. We are one of the most liberal countries, and Saudis are one of the most conservative ones. And myself, I'm as liberal as they come. I live in a commune, look a bit funny, so definitely not from a conservative end. But indeed, direction of a country matters a lot. So where is the country headed? The war in Ukraine started when this program was like already that I'm going to go there. So of course I had to reflect on my participation on things as well. But in the end, opening up the society has continued, even in spite of the negative press that Saudi Arabia gets constantly. And they are diversifying the economy, and the only way that there is to increase the civil liberties even further on. And that's also in the background talks that everyone expects that process to continue as well. So if a rock and roll hippie like myself doesn't feel out of place there, doesn't feel unwelcome, or isn't unable to navigate the different intricacies of the country, I don't believe others won't either. Sure, I'm a man, I have a beard, and beard does help there, but still, it was a very, very pleasant experience. And last random bit is that the country's crazy on QR codes. You can never get the paper menu or paper information on anything. It's always on QR codes. And if anyone paid attention to one of the screenshots, the only one that isn't from the games that our teams made, you noticed that the data roaming costs were by kilobytes. So 13 euros per megabyte. So having to use QR codes for everything, that's a bit risky. So if you go there, make sure that you have a local SIM card or you go bankrupt. I met a Finn who had made 11,000 euros phone bill in 1 month. So that's one of the random bits. But indeed, in the end, I feel that I made a work that has very positive impact. I feel that borrowing a bit of Finnish military, I did work that has a purpose. So, and even better, I feel that I made some friends there as well. So that's my reflections on Saudis.
Thank you. Jussi, that was super interesting. Thanks for all your insight.
Yeah.
I want to start with a question. There might be a question from the audience. Again, just raise your hand and then stand up.
I had a huge trouble. I had so many anecdotes, but I had to drop all the anecdotes.
Okay. But since you've been doing incubation or acceleration for quite a long time, what has changed within that field and the needs of what is the role of incubation these days for the global game industry?
Well, I'm kind of startup believer that looking at the history of games or game industry is that it always comes in waves. That I don't remember the civilized word that when big companies buy smaller ones. There's conglomerate, anyway, someone knows the word that it's smaller ones are being bought. But then, since the 70s, technology opens new doors, then it becomes more fragmented. It's the time for startups to shine, new fortunes made, and then again the big ones start buying. And it's been going on like this. And now it's clearly not so friendly for startups. Now big players are buying the small ones because the competition is tough. But I'm pretty sure that soon something new comes. Big corporations are always less agile, so the cool stuff, whenever there is a technological or business opportunity, startups start exploiting that faster, and thus it's good to be pumping up startups constantly.
Yeah, so it's easier to move a couple of people than like a couple of hundred people.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, any question? There is one question from the audience, so Usma.
Thank you very much, Jussi, for a very interesting talk. Could you tell us a bit more about these people involved? Like, how were they selected? Could you tell us a bit for these programs, and what was their educational background and also their background with the games?
Excellent question. That's one where the bureaucracy was a bit not helpful. We had, if I remember right, 2,000 applicants for the ministry side, which they refused to integrate for us. So we lost 1,600 applications in the process. So in the end, we got 400 applications, which we had quite very extensive, like I would have made like more light internet survey on their backgrounds. They had to record self-introductory video on top of their CVs and questions, and like very long questionnaire. And then we went through one by one. We did have in mind that we are building like sensible structures, so we knew how many programmers, how many artists, how many business developers and so forth we want to take. And then we just ranked based on the applications. The clear ones were selected first, and then then there was the kind of middle ones, which we then paid extra attention. I'm not sure, did I think we interviewed, all that we did select, we did also interview, but out of those 400, I think we interviewed maybe 150. I'm not sure of the exact numbers, but like this. So lots of applications were lost in the process, but theoretically 2,000 applications.
Who do you think was kind of excluded in the first stage? Was it transparent at all?
I honestly think it was just technical issues that the MCIT wanted to use their system, which in many ways I understand. It's personal records, and they are like making sure that outsiders don't get to see the personal records and so forth. So I think it was just that they didn't want to integrate the systems, but then the communication should have been better, so that out of those 2,000, they would have known that, okay, now the next step is then to apply for our system, which doesn't require as much information. There was another interesting thing, that we were only allowed to teach Saudis, so even if they had friends or colleagues or someone who would want to join their teams, they were free to do so, but they were not allowed into the program.
So like expats, for instance?
Yeah, for example, or yeah.
Interesting. Did it, how about the games themselves, the ones that were, how many games were at the end?
At the end of incubation, there were 20 games. Some had a couple of games, but let's say 25 games, 20 teams. So,
Like, were there anything like in the Saudi games that you incubated? Were there anything different than from the other countries? Like, or did you see any patterns of themes and topics or genres in any of these incubation systems?
Quite many did have kind of the cultural aspect, even the ones that went all the way to the accelerator as well. That the Arabian mythologies, mostly like the Arabian mythologies, some monsters in the sea and so forth, that they would want to popularize to the rest of the world. So kind of themes that are underserved, so the cultural elements, they were quite heavy, but at the same time, like, also tiny bit back to that, they all were gamers, so they also want to do cool games. And one of the teams that, which I hope no one in Saudis watched this, but was definitely one of my ultimate favorites, is based on Maori mythology, which is like, okay, Saudis making Maori mythology game, so...
Okay. We'll see.
Well,
We're going to check out that game. Maybe one quick question from the audience. Salif, do you have one? Oh, Twitch, okay. Oh, there is a question on the Twitch. Do you have any advice for anyone who wants to get involved in mentorship roles in such initiatives? How do you get to be a mentor?
Networking definitely helps. Like, for our program, I know for a fact that LinkedIn helped. We did invite, I think, at least 3 people that none of us knew, but we were searching for via LinkedIn that, hey, we need someone who is specialized on this specific topic, who would
have that.
That, and also it's different to know and different to be able to mentor. So we also looked a bit that they have to have talked in conferences, a bit at least. But so, like, networks and keep your LinkedIn up to date.
Cool. We were running out of time, but I do want to ask one more question that it kind of ties to the after the break program. Is that what is the role? Is there any role for game jams for incubation acceleration programs?
Excellent question. There is, like, I think that the whole Middle East is quite big on game jams. There were at least 3 game jams during my time there. And the Samer Abbas, our main, or the program director, he started already 10 years ago in Jordan with game jams, and then did game jams in Egypt as well. So the game jam culture is quite strong, and it's been used to kind of bring people together as well. So
Thank you, Jussi, for your insight. Jussi will be also at the gallery if the people locally here want to talk more. So thank you so much.